Bond is a honky. But it's blaxploitation Bond. The second novel in the series, published in 1954, finds Bond on the trail of one Mr. Big, an African-American gang leader who owns and operates a series of brothels and nightclubs in Harlem. He's also believed to be a smuggler of pirate treasure, namely to finance SMERSH, the Russian spy organization, predominantly seen in the novels. Meanwhile, the 1973 Guy Hamilton-helmed film, the eighth in the series, finds Bond investigating the deaths of 3 MI6 agents in New York, New Orleans, and San Monique. His investigations lead him to Dr. Kananga, the leader of San Monique, and Mr. Big, an African-American gang leader based out of Harlem who owns and operates a series of filet-of-soul restaurants. It's eventually revealed that Big's goal is to wrest control of the heroin market away from those currently in control of it. In the novel, Mr. Big is an older man with chronic heart disease who has a thing for women, and who isn't fully African. So Bond disposes of his threat by blowing up his boat and leaving him for the sharks. Mr. Big, played by Yaphet Kotto, best known for his role as Lieutenant Giardalo on Homicide: Life of the Street, is Kananga, or Kananga is Big thanks to prosthetic facial pieces and a wig. While the novel shows Big as one who isn't superstitious yet relies on the culture of voodoo to instill fear, the film shows Kananga to be one who uses the illusion of voodoo to prevent outsiders from discovering his poppy fields. You also have the fact that Kananga is more superstitious and relies on the fortune-telling powers of solitaire, which manifest themselves through her tarot readings. Bond dismisses of his threat by blowing him up with a compressed gas pellet. Solitaire is Big's soon-to-be wife, and is a rather timid, obedient, and not too rebellious woman. Then again, Big did promise her fame and fortune through lounge singing, but he ends up using her as a human lie detector. So as a result, she views Bond as, well, a path to freedom and sexual awakening. So she basically throws herself at him, demanding to be rescued. So Bond rescues her twice, but when they go to consummate their relationship, well, he's crippled, first by a broken hand and then by a broken arm. And additionally, Bond views her as the prize at the end of such a dangerous road, and Strangways, if you remember him from Dr. No, is sort of a romantic and views her as a sort of damsel in distress. Solitaire, played by Jane Seymour, better known as Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, kind of views Bond in a similar manner, but she's kind of on the weak end and, well, isn't really a proactive, get-things-done sort of Bond girl. While she doesn't throw herself at Bond, per se, she's even hesitant at getting into a relationship with him, even though her cards predict the two of them as lovers, and even though Bond does stack the deck against her to get into bed with her. But about an hour into the film, she loses her prognostication abilities after they consummate their relationship, perhaps because, 1, she's a virgin, or 2, their relationship is considered out of wedlock. Or she might not have if she had waited until Kananga provided her with the love he promised her. As for other women in the film, there's a nameless Italian agent sharing a bed with Bond, but they're interrupted when M and Moneypenny arrive and pay Bond a house call to give him his next assignment. But she's really a one-dimensional shag. There's also Rosie Carver, a CIA agent working under Felix Leiter and serving Kananga as a double agent. She's decently trained, on her second mission, a bit superstitious, and is killed by one of Kananga's remote surveillance scarecrow drones after sleeping with Bond and refusing to divulge secrets. You could say that she was killed to police interracial relationships, but then again, we don't like to think that way around these parts, do we? We're forward-thinking, we like progress and equality, don't we? As for the CIA agents, Felix Leiter, this time played by David Hiddleston, still serves as kind of a sidekick or lackey in the film, despite the fact that he's Bond's American equivalent of sorts in the novels. While there really isn't too much in the way of undertone in the film, there is in the novel. When Felix wakes up in the hospital, Bond is the first person he thinks of, and Bond, of course, sends get-well wishes and I miss him wishes. There's also Harold Strutter, a light-skinned African-American CIA agent, who's more of a go-between than Leiter is. Leiter is kind of the all-seeing agent, and Strutter is the inside man on the ground, if you will. But in the novel, Leiter has more of an in the African-American community because of, among other things, his knowledge of jazz musicians. One thing that is equally prevalent, if not more pervasive in the film, is Big's network of informants and contacts. You get some of that scattered throughout the novel as you see Whisper operating the lone switchboard in New York. However, it seems like most, if not all, African-American characters in the film are part of Big's informant of networks and are on his payroll. Meanwhile, Whisper is more prevalent in the film and serves kind of as Big's right-tier henchman. Of course, none other than Tee-Hee serves as Big's right claw henchman. While briefly seen in the novel, Tee-Hee Johnson is greatly expanded upon in the film, and his claw is put to use as a tool of intimidation and torture. While, of course, he doesn't have the claw in the novel, he does have vice-like hands, which is most likely what the claw was interpreted from. Anyways, Bond disposes of the threat of Tee-Hee by snipping the cables to control his claw and tossing him off a train, literally disarming him. As for gadgets, the novel doesn't have any, as Bond relies on his instincts, training, and his gun. In the film, however, Bond mainly employs a trick-dot watch that doubles as a really strong magnet and a mini chainsaw or buzzsaw. Yeah, this is where the gadgets start to get more outlandish. And before we close out, we have the drooling simpleton of a Louisiana sheriff, J.W. Pepper, who leads a chase after Bond and Bond's tails through the bayous of Louisiana as if to, well, make fun of police departments in the States, especially in the South. And as for Bond himself, Roger Moore, previously known for his work on The Saint, does a fairly good job of continuing the character, even though he kind of makes him into more of a smooth-talking womanizer. Both the film and the novel, while touching a bit on African exoticism and voodoo culture, also delve into the duality of African American society. They're viewed as wanting to fit in, yet have their own little world, if you will. This can be seen in the difference between blue-collar and white-collar African American workers, as well as the fact that Kananga talks jive as Big, and Rosie talks kind of like a cave person when she first meets Coral Jr. So, while both forms of Live and Let Die provide varying levels of entertainment, the film, which differs greatly from the novel, and does skirt the perhaps touchy border between tasteful and potentially racial humor, is more amusing, even though the novel does more to develop the characters of Bond and Leiter. But then again, the film does have a score by George Martin and an opening theme by Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, and Wings. Next week, Dracula and his vertically challenged assistant pay a visit to Bond with one intention: to kill Bond. Like that hasn't been tried multiple times already.